And I mean, right now, especially, we're in a time of crisis. There's a pandemic going on. There's all these things happening. But every time of crisis is actually an opportunity. There was never a moment in history when a crisis came and nothing changed. There was always someone who came out of that strong, someone who came up with a solution that changed the world. And maybe that could be you. Maybe you see an issue or a gap that you can address, and that could be your next project. It might not even start as an entrepreneur thing. It could start as a personal pet project that grew into something big.
What's up mga ka-investa? Welcome to episode 15 of the Invest to Learn Business Talk. And I'm Renzo, I'm your host for this show. And again, my job here is to interview and deconstruct and get inspiration from successful Filipino entrepreneurs, business founders, co-founders. Syempre, para ma-inspire tayo and may matutunan tayo if we want to start our own business or if we are doing our own business right now. Alright, so this is gonna be a very short conversation, less than 30 minutes lang yung pag-usapan namin. But I think this is one of the most impactful and one of the most important episodes dito sa series, no? Because my guest for today, quick background lang, she is Louise Mabulo. She is a junior MasterChef finalist. If nakita nyo siya sa TV before, and she's been awarded the Young Champion of the Earth 2019 by the UN Environment Program. And she's part of the Forbes 30 Under 30 and the founder of the Cacao Project. So, marami siyang awards but I'm not gonna mention them all here because napaka-successful niya at a very early age. But this episode is very important because we're gonna be talking about agriculture and papakita niya sa atin yung mga opportunities na hindi natin nakikita na nandun pala if you simply look at agriculture, if you try to understand it and study it. And di ba maraming problema when it comes to our culture, when it comes to how we see farmers, how we see agriculture, and how we think of them as low-income people, di ba? So babaguhin niya lahat yon in this episode. So I hope ma-inspire namin kayo and I hope marami kayong ma-interesado sa agriculture after this episode. So without further ado, let's move on to the conversation. Alright, what's up mga ka-investa? Welcome back to the Invest to Learn Business Talk. I am here with Louise Mabulo. Hi, Louise.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello, welcome to the show and thank you very much for being here. I know you're a very busy person right now. And just a little bit context, now we booked this a month in advance so that you can fit this in your schedule. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. So, all right. So this show is more on business. So we talk a lot about entrepreneurship and how do we encourage people to start their own businesses to become more financially stable. And of course, you are a figure in entrepreneurship, in agriculture, in the culinary arts. So thank you for being here and thank you for inspiring a lot of people. So before we go into the detailed stuff, I'd like to go with the origins of you. So how was your upbringing like, and what were some of the events that you can remember in your life that led you to this kind of awakening when it comes to the culinary or the agricultural sector? So what opened your mind to all of this?
Wow, origin story. Now that goes way back. So many people don't realize this. Well, I grew up in the UK. I was in South Wales, so kind of my upbringing was very, I would say, compared to the Philippines, was very utopian. So I had this exposure to like a different country, and I didn't really realize what true poverty looked like or what. My concept of farming is very different from the Philippine concept of farming. And I moved to the Philippines when I was, I think, probably 9 or 10 years old, and for the very first time, I saw what poverty looked like. I saw what our, farmers were going through. And I was completely kind of desensitized to the concept that, this is what was going on here. Because when I grew up in the UK, when you say farmers, people would kind of think, oh, you're very rich. You probably own tractors and large fields of land. But here, if you say you're farmer, you're probably not well off. And that was a huge issue to me because I thought, like, why is it that the people who produce our food aren't making that much income? And so that was kind of on my mind for some time. I was in the TV reality show Junior MasterChef when I was 12. And my passion is cooking. I love food. I love everything about ingredients and where they come from. And you farm to table, growing your own food is just a magical experience. And so I was in the show, and that kind of launched myself into a culinary career. So at 15, I was kind of like a Philippine prodigy for culinary. And that was a big part of my career. But me being myself, I didn't want to just be a chef that was
Mm-hmm.
cooking in the back of a restaurant. I wanted it to have a platform and an advocacy. And my advocacy for a very long time was farm to table, from getting local cuisine and making it into an upgraded, special kind of dish that you could serve in a gourmet setting. And that was, for a very long time, that was what I was working on. So a little bit, a jump back was when I was 14. I had money from Junior MasterChef. I was making income from doing cooking shows and everything. And I wanted something to invest in. And I thought the best thing I could probably invest in, since I live in an agricultural town, is to buy probably some cows. Like, I invested in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things. I invested in stocks and in livestock. And I was one of those very entrepreneurial young girls. And I bought these cows. I fattened them up. 3 months later, I sold them. And it was like, I bought it for, I think, 7 to 8,000 pesos. It was very small, very thin. I fattened it. There was a bunch of grass just growing around my house. So for those 3 months, it's just fattening it, giving it molasses. And then 3 months later, I sold it for 28,000 pesos. So that was like a 200% return of income for me. And at 14, I was like, hang on, this is great. Like 3 months, you can't even get this in stock. So I thought, instead of buying stocks, I'll buy livestock. So for a long time, I was kind of already farming, but in a very underground, secret way. Like, oh, I'm just growing my own stuff, like no big deal. And I've had my eye on farmers and agriculture because of being in culinary. I've been working with farmers, getting their ingredients, promoting their ingredients. And when it was, I think it was in December 2016 when I got into the agricultural sector, like all the way, because of Typhoon Knock 10. So Typhoon Knock 10 destroyed 80% of agricultural land in my town alone. And that was a big deal for us because my town is mostly consisting of people who are farmers, who are doing rice, coconut, corn farming. And it was devastating because it meant people would lose their livelihoods for months or even years and not have a stable form of income. So that was kind of when I started. I had to think, like, what can I do to help the farmers here? What can I do to make things better and to build more resiliency in their livelihoods? And that's kind of how the Cacao Project started. So we started more as a typhoon relief effort. It didn't really start as a big like social venture. I didn't plan it to become a social venture, but it started as a typhoon relief effort where we gave them short-term crops. And then eventually we started with cacao, which was more resilient, better suited to our climate and our ecosystem. And that's how the Cacao Project came to be.
All right, all right. Wow, it's a great story. So, how did you see? So, you've had firsthand experience when it comes to agriculture. And looking at the BSA agricultural imports and exports, we can see that we have more. It's a big deficit. Last 2019, more imports than exports. So we're seeing a big problem when it comes to the agricultural sector in the Philippines. So why do you think that's the problem here in the Philippines? Unlike in other countries, you said that most farmers there are well off, are better off than here in the Philippines.
I think it's the kind of value placed on our farmers. I think we need more policies that put our farmers first, and we need more consumers that are more conscious of locally produced ingredients in food and produce, really. Because if you think about it, we have this mentality in the Philippines, like kind of going back to that idea about farmers being more well off in other countries and not as well off in ours. But a lot of consumers here think that there's a better premium on imported goods. So people would prefer to have salmon and I don't know, asparagus and all these
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. They feel that those are exclusive and important and better quality. And a lot of us would prefer to buy those things. Like, for example, you think that a nice steak or whatever it is better when it comes from another country than if you produce it locally. And that there's a kind of stigma in our culture that's kind of stayed because of it's like a post-colonial culture
Mm-hmm.
that we see Western or foreign food or ingredients as superior to local ingredients. And so more people would prefer to get something from abroad than they would here. And they don't look they don't look up to our farmers as kind of an authority on quality of produce. And I mean, we as a country also have a problem. We tend to ship out the best of our ingredients and leave the lesser quality stuff behind. And so that also feeds into kind of that idea that we have lesser quality produce. But if we have more artisans and keep supporting them and equip farmers with the processing to make those ingredients and produce into something better, into an end product, then I feel like we can slowly change that shift. And I've seen it kind of happening now, with food trends. Like once upon a time, the food trends were kind of foreign foods, like it would just trickle into our country, people would start copying that. But now I see people are buying things like ube cheese pandesal, and it's become the new dalgona coffee, and it's quite exciting to see that, thanks to everything going on, that there's slowly a better awareness about local ingredients and local food that people find more comforting or more, I think, exciting to look forward to.
And all right. So one of the main problems we see is the culture. What do you think we can do to help change that perception that we have when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to being a farmer? So do you have any suggestions?
Oh, definitely. So first things first is in schools, there's this huge issue with language and uses of like terms of phrase that people use. So for example, a kid is failing in class or they're not doing very well. A teacher will tell you, kung hindi ka mag-aaral na mabuti, mangangamote ka or pupulutin ka sa kangkungan. And it's in those very small things that when kids are just young, they start to think that failure equates to becoming a farmer, or you're gonna be farming sweet potatoes or
Mm.
spinach or vegetables if you're a failure, and they view that as an end all. Like there's no value in becoming a farmer because that's like the worst thing you can be. And it's kind of like it begins at that level in young kids. And I actually was working with this class in UP where they published a book that was talking about young farmers and the value of our ingredients and the value of our produce in the communities. So it's like we're slowly trying to change that at the school level. But then as you grow older, there's also the sense that people just grew up with that stigma that, oh, farmers are just not well off. It equates to poverty. And I don't know exactly why it's not been changed as we went along. But I think it's because of the existing stigmas about farming. For example, farming is not a high income job, or like farmers are people from the provinces who don't earn as much. And I feel like that's because people have been taking advantage of our food systems and food production systems. So for example, let's see, there's a stigma that farming is bad for the environment, and in reality there's a new kind of movement coming along. It's called regenerative agriculture, where agriculture can be used for the environment. For many, many years, we've been farming food and it's never been a problem. It's only become a problem when we've kind of commercialized it too much and people have been mass farming and using the wrong farming methods because of all these kind of, how do you say, like these corporate ideas, people
Mhm.
have to just produce more and people don't think of value and quality as much. So it's kind of changed within the last, say, 50 years. But now we're trying to bring back that sustainable farming idea. So first we have to change how we farm. It has to be more sustainable. Before you make it cool, it has to be sustainable. Second, it has to be profitable. So one of the things about profitability is that farmers don't know how to process a lot of their ingredients. So you see a lot of tomatoes getting wasted in highland areas. You see a lot of ingredients that are just being thrown away. And that's because no one knows the processing or post-harvest of those things, and they don't secure a market that's willing to pay you as much. So they'll get, say, a middleman that will pay you much less than it's actually worth. And then eventually, when there's so many people selling tomatoes, the middleman will kind of look for the cheapest option and then get that one. And there's no security for the farmers. So we need to secure the farmers and make sure they have a fair market, make sure they're equipped with post-harvest facilities and post-harvest knowledge and skills. And fourth, it's just really supporting local and buying local and understanding that our local ingredients are just so good. We just don't realize it. And during the pandemic, at the very start, we realized that because a lot of us weren't able to kind of ship out our goods to supermarkets or ship them out to other countries. So some of the produce that got left behind was some of the best that we usually ship away. Like here in my community, I had no idea that our fisher folk catch lobsters, rainbow lobsters. because it turns out that once they get it at sea, they sell it to Japanese fisher folk and they bring it back to Japan. And that just blew my mind. So a lot of those things, we don't see it, but we have amazing quality produce and such rich soil and rich harvests. And we just have to really appreciate it and kind of connect directly to the farmers who are producing it.
And how does this tie in with the Cacao Project? So first, you said that it has to be sustainable more than being cool and profitable, and the
Yeah.
profitability part. And after after harvesting the crops, how do you help the farmers sell their produce? So how do you do that in the Cacao Project?
So with the Cacao Project, what we're doing right now is we're consolidating their beans because, of course, people here have limited land space, and when you have limited land space, you can only sell a small amount of beans, and that doesn't fetch you as much. But when you sell it in bulk and you consolidate everything, that kind of, you're able to sell it to larger companies who have a bigger demand, and we're consolidating it for our farmers. We're also putting up a post-harvest facility, which is really exciting, so we can actually make it into chocolates, but that will come, I think, later along the line. We're just looking to make income for the farmers and to kind of build up our post-harvest facility a lot better, so we can make our own chocolate soon.
All right. And how is it doing now that we are in a pandemic? How has that affected the project so far?
Well, with our project, I feel like, well, the pandemic has definitely stopped a lot of our training programs, since we can't gather people. Although we did release a couple videos online for like a
Mm,
digital, like virtual cacao training with the Agricultural Training Institute. And let's see, with the post-harvest facility, I've been much more fortunate because I've been traveling around the world a lot, that I haven't had as much time here at home and actually building the training center. But now that I'm grounded here, I had time to focus on it. So we're nearly done with finishing up the building and furnishing it. Although a few deliveries are just a problem. Like I can't get certain machines to come in because they come from other countries. Otherwise, we're still on track, and the farmers are actually looking forward to a lot more harvests. And we're very lucky as well because with the Cacao Project, we're not just farming cocoa, we're also farming a diverse range of crops. We're just really diversifying the crops that our farmers are already making through agroforestry techniques. And with that, it's because of that that we have so many harvests now. Like if we just farm the usual things, we would have an issue with food security. But now our farmers are harvesting all sorts of like vegetables. We have like lettuce,
mm.
pumpkins, all these different things that are coming in. So there's no food security issues, and they're still able to bring quite a lot to the market. So it's really, we're really quite self-sustaining here. In fact, during the first month of the pandemic, when everything was having a huge issue, I felt like we were in this bubble, like this heavenly bubble of self-sustaining, self-sufficient community. Because like here I had so much food. I told you we had like lobsters coming in,
Yeah.
all our fisher folk. We were just barter trading with each other with all our ingredients. And it was so lovely to realize how much we were producing. And now we don't really have an issue when it comes to that because it's essential work. It's food. It's really necessary as we keep going along.
All right. So thank you so much for sharing your story when it comes to agriculture. And I hope more people would see the opportunity here and try to look into that and try to develop a certain kind of passion. So just to get inspiration and tips from you, I noticed how very passionate you are about your mission about
Yeah.
agriculture. And I noticed how you already have this sense of purpose or mission at this early point in your life. So, do you have any advice for those who are still kind of lost, those who don't know what they want to do in life, those who are young that would like to start something great but they are pretty lost? So, do you have any advice for that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I have quite a lot of advice for that. I could probably write a book out of it. Um, for young people, I feel like I was very lucky to find my passion young. I mean, it's food and cooking and ingredients, but I didn't get into agriculture until I was like 18. Um, but for young people, especially like my generation, Gen Zers and millennials, we have this concept that we want to be like entrepreneurs. We want to save the world. We want to be kind of this, I don't know, we have this savior complex sometimes where we just want to do great things. We want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk. but it really starts somewhere small, somewhere unexpected. So first is to really, if you look at the wide web of the world, every issue has these micro issues, have these small goals before you actually get to that thing. So it's really looking at that web and finding that one string that you can work on. And usually that one string that you can work on is either with yourself, with your community, with your neighborhood. It's very personal. So if there's ever an issue that you want to address or work on, it always has to be something that's quite personal. If you interview any entrepreneur or any business person, there's always a story behind it. And usually that story is coming from their life, their experience. And that's really important because we can't address an issue or change something unless we personally know how it feels to be in that position or to empathize with the people we're helping. And so that's like, for me, it's my community and these typhoons that we experience every year. For other people, it's something different. So work on something that you're personally knowledgeable about. You experience. If there's a problem that you know that you can address, then that's the problem that you should start with. Start with your own household if you can. For me, I started farming on my own, so that's kind of like where it started for me. And another thing is, we're in a world where everything, everything is at the tip of our fingers. It's on our phones. You can find all the knowledge there. And there's a lot of posts where you can like things and you help them in a sense, but it's not enough to just scroll anymore. It's not enough to just be on social media. Now is a time that you can start utilizing social media to actually make an impact that's tangible in the real world. Or you could put down your phone and go outside and talk to your neighbors and see if there's something that you can do directly for them, even if it's so small. Because for me, if I've just changed one person's life, that makes all the difference. And it usually starts there, and your mission will continue to grow as you move along, because it's a journey. It's not like I found my passion and my mission immediately. That mission came slowly and incrementally, and it was a journey that I grew with, and it's growth as well. So hopefully that as people go along with their life, they kind of learn from every experience that they come along and they come by, and that in the journey to help others, you're also kind of developing yourself. And it's kind of like a two-way mission, and I'm always still learning, and my passions still kind of change and evolve, and I'm still figuring everything out. So you don't really figure everything out in one go. It comes to you in like probably a span of months to years. So
All right. Thank you so much for that. Very, 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 very good advice. Thank you so much for that. So another thing I'd like to ask is, what would your advice be for those of us who would like to pursue entrepreneurship?
it's pretty much the same advice I just gave. It's just start small, start local, start with something that's close to you. It's You can't save the world in one overnight, in one go, with one project, and it'll take a long time. There will be a lot of failures and challenges and stumbles along the way, but every failure is an opportunity to see where you can change, where you can grow. And I mean, right now especially, we're in a time of crisis. There's a pandemic going on. There's all these things happening, but every time of crisis is actually an opportunity. There was never a moment in history when a crisis came and nothing changed. There was always someone who came out of that strong, someone who came up with a solution that changed the world. And maybe that could be you. Maybe you see an issue or a gap that you can address, and that could be your next project. It might not even start as an entrepreneur thing. It could start as a personal pet project that grew into something big because it's so necessary. So look for urgency, look for gaps where you can apply yourself and any skills that you have, because no matter how small the skill is, it's going to be very valuable when you apply it to a real world issue, and you'll continue growing with it. And so entrepreneurs, now is actually a great time to be an entrepreneur, and there's a lot of things to learn from everything going on. But first, before you become like a leader, you should also learn from leaders yourself. So find a mentor, which is one of the things that I hope that all entrepreneurs will have, because it's their experiences and their mistakes that you can kind of build up on. And I've had such a supportive mentor group who've been like pushing me along. And the amazing thing about mentors is, like, 40 years of experiences and mistakes, you can learn from them in an afternoon just sitting down with them, and it's so valuable. So I think one of my advice for entrepreneurs is go local, address a problem that's close to you, slowly grow it out, and also have a very supportive mentor to help you along the way.
And who's the biggest mentor that influenced you heavily in this journey of yours?
Huh, that's hard. I feel bad because now all my mentors will be very upset if I don't mention them. Um, but I feel like one of them that I would very much proudly talk about are my parents, my mom and my dad. My dad is a mayor of my town, and he's always had a heart for the people. And I've been very lucky to have such a supportive dad. And it starts there, I mean, in your own household, with your own family. And my mom as well, who's kind of the one who teaches me to grow with everything and figure things out. And she's the one who's like, be more proactive and do things. And I've been homeschooled most of my life, so they were also my
Mm,
teachers. So I'm very lucky to have supportive parents, and hopefully people have that supportive backing behind them too.
all right. So kudos to mom and dad. So
Yes.
a final question. How do you encourage people to go into the agricultural sector? So how do you encourage the youth, especially to try to venture in, try to learn more about agriculture?
Well, I mean, there's so many ways for youth to be in agriculture now, especially since a lot of people left agriculture because they didn't want to um, be in the provinces and they wanted a nice city job with a nice desk and a good uniform. But I feel like now young people can contribute so much into making agriculture more profitable, into bringing more innovation. So you can look into innovations that you can find. And now with the regenerative agriculture movement, I mean, it's very much youth-led. Young people are starting to become kind of like the, how do you say, the spokespeople of this new movement. And it's not even new; it's an old movement that we're just starting to revive now. Another thing is that I always do this when I have talks in colleges. People are always quite skeptical, like, why would I go into agriculture when it's not that profitable? But I keep telling them, like, look, if you compare an entry level job in the city and you take away your from your salary, your rent, your transportation, your food, the clothes that you'll wear, your living expenses, basically you'll have barely anything. But if you live in the provinces, you have ownership of land. A lot of young people have ownership of land. They just don't realize it because it's like inherited from their parents and they sell it. But if you have ownership of land or use your family's land, or buy land, it's not so expensive anymore. But yeah, basically cultivate it, grow your own vegetables, grow, say, cows, pigs, chickens, what have you, and you reduce the living expenses in the provinces. It's a lot less than if you had in Metro Manila, and you earn much more out of that. There's a larger cut that's just pure profit. And so there's a lot of opportunity for young people in that field. And for me, I mean, I started with just one cow. So it could just start with one cow for young people who are doing agriculture. But yeah, slowly grow it out. And there's huge opportunities here in the provinces now. And slowly but surely, I feel like more young people have uh, greater opportunity to profit from it because there's less producers now. People are selling off land for development, and there's less land for actually producing food and agriculture. In fact, the average age of farmers in the country is 57 years old. And if we don't do anything in the next 15 years, we'll have a food security crisis. So if young people would start now, we can actually prevent an entire food security crisis. But since there's so few producers, you'll also earn more from the ingredients that you actually make. So it's now's the time to start, guys.
All right. So that's it. Thank you so much for the for sharing that opportunity with us, and thank you for giving us a lot of value from the short time that we had. Of course, we want to become respectful of your time. So, Luis, do you have anything else to say? Would you like our viewers to check out your website or anything you would like them to check out?
Oh yes, definitely. You could follow me on Instagram at Louise DG Mabulo. It's the same on Facebook, and on Twitter it's just Louise Mabulo. And I also have a website which is thereallouisemabulo.com. And if you'd like to follow our work on agriculture, specifically for the Cacao Project, we have an Instagram page that I'd recently put up, which is called the Cacao Project PH. So feel free to follow us.
All right. So check that out, guys. Maraming salamat. Thank you so much, Luis, for being here, and thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much,
much.
Renzo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Alright, so that's it for this episode, guys. Maraming salamat for tuning in. Sana marami kayong value na nakuha and sana nag-enjoy kayo from this episode. If meron kayong suggestions, comments, feedback, if you want me to ask a specific question in the future, or if you want a certain person to be in this podcast, please let me know in the comments below. So if you liked it, if may natutunan kayo, please share it with your friends, share it to those who you think are interested with business, those who want to start their own business. And if you want to learn how to invest in the stock market, go to investalearn.com. That's it mga ka-investa, paalam.